Chapter 6 of Gray Lensman by E. Smith. Chapter 6. Suicide? Or did you— Geron paused delicately. Winstead, the lensman of narcotics, said nothing, but looked on intently. Neither, Kinnison replied, still studying. I would have had to, but she beat me to it. What do you mean, neither? She's dead, isn't she? How did it happen? Not yet, and unless I'm more cockeyed even than usual, she won't be. She isn't the type to rub herself out, ever, under any conditions. As to how, that was easy. A hollow false tooth, simple but new and clever. But why? Why? Kinnison was thinking to himself more than addressing his companions. If they had killed her, yes. As it is, it doesn't make any sense, any of it. But the girl's dying, protested Gerund. What are you going to do? I wish to Clono I knew. The Tellurian was puzzled, groping. No hurry doing anything about her. What was done to her has been done, and no one this side of Hades can undo it. Unless I can fit these pieces together into some kind of a pattern, I'll never know what it's all about. None of it makes sense. He shook himself and went on. One thing is plain, she won't die. If they had intended to kill her, she would have died almost instantly. They figure she's worth saving, in which I agree with them. At the same time, they certainly are not planning on letting me tap her knowledge. They may be planning on taking her away from us. Therefore, as long as she stays alive, or even not dead, the way she is now, guard her so heavily that an army can't get her. If she should happen to die, don't leave her body unguarded for a second until she's been autopsied, and you know she'll stay dead. The minute she recovers, day or night, call me. Might as well take her to the hospital now, I guess. The call came soon that the patient had indeed recovered. She's talking, but I haven't answered her, Gerond reported. There's something strange here, Kinnison. There would be, bound to be. Hold everything until I get there. And he hurried to the hospital. Good morning, Dessa, he greeted her in Aldebaranian. You are feeling better, I hope. Her reaction was surprising. You really know me? She almost shrieked and flung herself into the lensman's arms. Not deliberately, not with her wonted highly effective technique of bringing into play the SA equipment with which she was so overpoweringly armed. No, this was the utterly innocent, the wholly unself-conscious abandon of a very badly frightened young girl. What happened? She sobbed frantically. Where am I? Why are all these strangers here? Her wide, childlike, tear-filled eyes sought his, and as he probed them, deeper and deeper into the brain behind them, his face grew set and hard. Mentally, she now was a young and innocent girl. Nowhere in her mind, not even in the deepest recesses of her subconscious, was there the slightest inkling that she had even existed since her 15th year. It was staggering, it was unheard of, but it was indubitably a fact. For her, now, the intervening time had lapsed instantaneously. 5 or 6 years of her life had disappeared so utterly as never to have been. You have been very ill, Dessa, he told her gravely, and you are no longer a child. He led her into another room and up to a triple mirror. See for yourself. But that isn't I, she protested. It can't be. Why, she's beautiful. You're all that, the lensman agreed casually. You had a bad shock. Your memory will return shortly, I think. Now you must go back to bed. She did so, but not to sleep. Instead, she went into a trance, and so almost did Kinnison. For over an hour he lay intensely asprawl in an easy chair, the while he engraved, day by day, a memory of missing years into that bare storehouse of knowledge. And finally the task was done. Sleep, Dessa, he told her then. Sleep. Waken in 8 hours, whole. Lensman, you're a man. Gerund realized vaguely what had been done. You didn't give her the truth, of course. Far from it. Only that she was married and is a widow. The rest of it is highly fictitious, just enough like the real thing so that she can square herself with herself if she meets old acquaintances. Plenty of lapses, of course, but they're covered by shock. But the husband? Queried the curious Redeligian. That's her business, Kinnison countered callously. She'll tell you if she ever feels like it. One thing I did, though, they'll never use her again. The next man that tries to hypnotize her will be lucky if he gets away alive. The advent of Des Plaines, however, and his curious adventure with her, had altered markedly the lensman's situation. No one else in the throng had worn a screen, but there might have been agents. Anyway, the observed facts would enable the higher-ups to link Fordyce up with what had happened. They would know, of course, that the real Fordyce hadn't done it. He could be Fordyce no longer. Wherefore the real Chester Q. Fordyce took over, and a strange unattached lensman appeared. A Posenian, supposedly, since against the air of Radalix he wore that planet's unmistakable armor. No other race of even approximately human shape could see through a helmet of solid, opaque metal. And in this guise Kinnison continued his investigations. That place and that man must be on this planet somewhere. The sending outfit worn by the Des Plaines woman could not possibly reach any other. He had a good picture of the room and a fair picture, several pictures in fact, of the man. The room was an actuality. All he had to do was to fill in the details which definitely, by unmistakable internal evidence, belonged there. The man was different. How much of the original picture was real and how much of it was the girl's impression? She was, he knew, physically fastidious almost to an extreme. He knew that no possible hypnotism could nullify completely the fundamental characteristics of the subconscious. The intrinsic ego could not be changed. Was the man really such a monster? Or was the picture in the girl's mind partially or largely the product of her physical revulsion? For hours he had sat at a recording machine, covering yard after yard of tape with every possible picture of the man he wanted. Pictures ranging from a man almost of normal build-up to a thing duplicating in every detail the woman's mental image. Now he ran the tape again, time after time. The two extremes, he concluded, were highly improbable. Somewhere in between. The man was fat, he guessed. Fat, and had a mean pair of eyes. No matter how Kinnison changed the man's physical shape, he had found it impossible to eradicate a personality that was definitely bad. The guy's a louse, Kinnison decided finally. Needs killing. Glad of that. If I have to keep on fighting women much longer, I'll go completely nuts. Got enough dope to identify him now, I think. And again the Tellurian lensman set out to comb the planet city by city. Since he was not now dealing with lensmen, every move he made had to be carefully planned and as carefully concealed. It was heartbreaking, but at long last he found a bartender who had once seen his quarry. He was fat, Kinnison discovered, and he was a bad egg. From that point on, progress was rapid. He went to the indicated city, which was, ironically enough, the very Ardith from which he had set out, and from a bit of information here and a bit there, he tracked down his man. He found the room first, and then the man. The girl wasn't so far wrong at that. Her aversion was something worse than the actuality, but not too much. Now, what to do? The technique he had used so successfully upon Boskonia II and in other bases could not succeed here. There were thousands of people instead of dozens, and someone would certainly catch him at it. Nor could he work at a distance. He was no Arisian. He had to be right beside his job. He would have to turn dock walloper. Therefore, a dock walloper he became. Not like one, but actually one. He labored prodigiously, his fine hands and his entire being becoming coarse and hardened. He ate prodigiously and drank likewise, but wherever he drank, his liquor was poured from the bartender's own bottle or from one of similarly innocuous contents, for then, as now, bartenders did not themselves imbibe the corrosively potent distillates in which they dealt. Nevertheless, Kinnison became intoxicated, boisterously, flagrantly, and pugnaciously so, as did his fellows. He lived scrupulously within his dock walloper's wages. 8 credits per week went to the company in advance for room and board. The rest he spent over the fat man's bar or gambled away at the fat man's crooked games, for Bominger, although engaged in vaster commerce far, nevertheless allowed no scruple to interfere with his insurient rapacity. Money was money, whatever its amount or source, or however despicable its means of acquirement. The lensman knew that the games were crooked, certainly. He could see, however they were concealed, the crooked mechanisms of the wheels. He could see the crooked workings of the dealers' minds as they manipulated their crooked decks. He could read as plainly as his own the cards his crooked opponents held. But to win or to protest would have set him apart. Hence he was always destitute before payday. Then, like his fellows, he spent his spare time loafing in the same saloon, vaguely hoping for a free drink or for a stake at cards, until one of the bouncers threw him out. But in his every waking hour, working, gambling, or loafing, he studied Bominger and Bominger's various enterprises. The lensman could not pierce the fat man's thought screen, and he could never catch him without it. However, he could, and did, learn much. He read volume after volume of locked account books, page by page. He read secret documents hidden in the deepest recesses of massive vault. He listened in on conference after conference, for a thought screen, of course, does not interfere with either sight or sound. The big shot did not own, legally, the saloon, nor the ornate, almost palatial back room which was his office. Nor did he own the dance hall and boudoirs upstairs, nor the narrow, cell-like rooms in which addicts of twice a score of different noxious drugs gave themselves over libidinously to their addictions. Nevertheless, they were his, and they were only a part of that which was his. Kinnison detected, traced, and identified agent after agent. With his sense of perception he followed passages leading to other scenes utterly indescribable here. One comparatively short gallery, however, terminated in a different setting altogether. For there, as here, and perhaps everywhere, ostentation and squalor lie almost back to back. Nalazak's Cafe, the high-life hot-spot of Radalix. Downstairs was innocuous enough. Nothing rough, that is, too rough, was ever pulled there. Most of the robbery there was open and above board, plainly written upon the checks. But there were upstairs rooms and cellar rooms and back rooms, and there were attics, differing only from those others in wearing finer raiment and being of a self-styled higher stratum. Basically, they were the same. Men, women, girls, ever were there, in the rigid muscle lock of thionite. Teeth hard set, every muscle tense and staring, eyes jammed close, fists clenched, faces white as though carved from marble, immobile in the frenzied emotion which characterized the ultimately passionate fulfillment of every suppressed desire, in the release of their every inhibition, crowding perilously close to the dividing line beyond which lay death from sheer ecstasy. That was the technique of the thionite sniffer, to take every microgram that he could stand, to come to, shaken and too weak even to walk, to swear that he would never so degrade himself again, to come back after more as soon as he had recovered strength to do so, and finally, with an irresistible craving for stronger and ever stronger thrills, to take a larger dose than his rapidly weakening body could endure, and so to cross that fatal line. There were also the idiotically smiling faces of the Hadive smokers, the twitching members of those who preferred the centralian nitrolabe needle, the helplessly stupefied eaters of Bentlum. But why go on? Suffice it to say that in that one city block could be found every vice and every drug enjoyed by the Radicalians and their usual run of visitors. And if perchance you were an unusual visitor, desiring something unusual, Bominger could get it for you, at a price. Kinnison studied, perceived, and analyzed. Also he reported, via lens, daily and copiously, to narcotics, under lensman's seal. "But, Kinnison," Winstead protested one day, "how much longer are you going to make us wait?" "Until I get what I came after, or until they get on to me," Kinnison replied flatly. For weeks his lens had been hidden in the side of his shoe, in a flat sheath of highly charged metal, proof against any except the most minutely searching spy ray inspections. But this new location did not in any way interfere with its functioning. "Any danger of that?" the narcotics head asked anxiously. "Plenty, and getting worse every day. More actors in the drama. Some day I'll make a slip. I can't keep this up forever." "Let us go, then," Winstead urged. "We've got enough now to blow this ring out of existence all over the planet." "Not yet. You're making good progress, aren't you?" "Yes, but considering—" "Don't consider it yet. Your present progress is normal for your increased force. Any more would touch off an alarm. You could take this planet's drug personnel, yes, but that isn't what I'm after. I want big game, not small fry. So sit tight until I give you the GA. QX?" "Got to be QX if you say so, Kinnison." "Be careful." "I am. Won't be long now, I'm sure. Bound to break very shortly, one way or the other. If possible, I'll give you and Gerrand warning." Kinnison had everything lined up except the one thing he had come after. This was, in fact, the headquarters of the drug syndicate for the entire planet of Radalix. He knew where the stuff came in, and when, and how. He knew who received it, and the principal distributors of it. He knew almost all the secret agents of the ring, and not a few even of the small fry peddlers. He knew where the remittances went, and how much, and what for. But every lead had stopped at Bominger. Apparently, the fat man was the absolute head of the drug syndicate, and that appearance didn't make sense. It had to be false. Bominger and the other planetary lieutenants, themselves only small fry if the lensman's ideas were only half right, must get orders from and send reports and, in probability, payments to some Boskonian authority. Of that Kinnison felt certain, but he had not been able to get even the slightest trace of that higher-up. That the communication would be established upon a thought beam, the Tellurian was equally certain. The Boskonian would not trust any ordinary tappable communicator beam, and he certainly would not be such a fool as to send any written or taped or otherwise permanently recorded message, however coded. No, that message, when it came, would come as thought, and to receive it the fat man would have to release his screen. Then, and not until then, could Kinnison act. Action at that time might not prove simple, judging from the precautions Bominger was taking already. He would not release his screen without taking plenty more, but until then the lensman could do nothing. That screen had not been released. Kinnison could swear to that. True, he had had to sleep at times, but he had slept in a very hair-trigger, with his subconscious and his lens set to guard that screen and to give the alarm at its first sign of weakening. As the lensman had foretold, the break came soon. Not in the middle of the night, as he had half thought that it would come, nor yet in the quiet of the daylight hours. Instead, it came well before midnight, while revelry was at its height. It did not come suddenly, but was heralded by a long period of gradually increasing tension of a mental stress very apparent to the mind of the watcher. Agents of the drug baron came in, singly and in groups, to an altogether unprecedented number. Some of them were their usual viciously self-contained selves. Others were slightly but definitely ill at ease. Kinnison, seated alone at a small table playing a game of Rattlegian solitaire, divided his attention between the big room as a whole and the office of Bomminger, in neither of which was anything definite happening. Then a wave of excitement swept over the agents as 5 men wearing thought screens entered the room and, sitting down at a reserved table, called for cards and drinks, and Kinnison thought it time to send his warning. "Gerund, Winstead, 3-way. It's going to break soon now, I think, tonight. Agents all over the place. 5 men with thought screens here on the floor. Nervous tension high. Lots more agents outside for blocks. General precaution, I think, not specific. Not suspicious of me, at least not exactly. Afraid of spies with a sense of perception. Rogelians or Bosinians or such. Just killed an Ordovik on general principles over on the next block. Get your gangs ready, but don't come too close, just close enough so that you can be here in 30 seconds after I call you." "What do you mean, not exactly suspicious? What have you done?" "Nothing that I know of. Any one of a million possible small slips I may have made. Nothing serious, though, or they wouldn't have let me hang around this long." "You're in danger. No armor, no delameter, no anything. Better come out while you can." "And miss what I've spent all this time building up? Not a chance. I'll be able to take care of myself, I think. Here comes one of the boys in a screen to talk to me. I'll leave my lens open so you can sort of look on." Just then, Bomminger's screen went down, and Kinnison invaded his mind, taking complete possession of it. Under his domination, the fat man reported to the Boskonian, reported truly and fully. In turn, he received orders and instructions. Had any inquisitive stranger been around, or anyone on the planet using any kind of a mind ray machine since that quadruply accursed lensman had held that trial? Oh, that was what had touched them off. Kinnison was glad to know it. No, nothing unusual at all. And just at that crucial moment, when the lensman's mind was so busy with its task, the stranger came up to his table and stared down at him dubiously, questioningly. "Well, what's on your mind?" Kinnison growled. He could not spare much of his mind just then, but it did not take much of it to play his part as a dock walloper. "You another of those smoking house numbers, snooping around to see if I'm trying to run a blazer on myself? By the devil and his imps, if I hadn't lost so much money here already, I'd tear up this deck and go over to Crolio's and never come near this crummy joint again. His rot gut can't be any worse than yours is." "Don't burn out a jet, pal." The agent, apparently reassured, adopted a conciliatory tone. "Who in hell ever said you was a pal of mine? You Rattlegian pimp." The supposedly 3/4 drunken, certainly 3/4 naked lensman got up, wobbled a little, and sat down again heavily. "Don't pal me, ape. I'm particular about who I pal with." "That's all right, big fellow. No offense intended," soothed the other. "Come on, I'll buy you a drink." "Don't want no drink until after I finish this game," Kinnison grumbled, and took an instant to flash a thought via lens. "All set, boys. Things moving fast. If I have to take this drink, it's doped, of course, I'll bust this bird wide open. When I yell, shake the lead out of your pants." "Of course you want a drink," the pirate urged. "Come and get it. It's on me, you know." "And who are you to be buying me, a Tellurian gentleman, a drink?" the lensman roared, flaring into one of the sudden, senseless rages of the character he had cultivated so assiduously. "That I ask you for a drink? I'm educated, I am, and I've got money, I have. I'll buy myself a drink when I want one." His rage mounted higher and higher, visibly. "Did I ever ask you for a drink, you—" Unprintable here for the space of 2 long breaths. This was the blow-off. If the fellow was even half honest, there would be a fight, which Kinnison could make as long as necessary. If he did not start slugging after what Kinnison had just called him, He was not what he seemed, and the lensman was surely suspected, for the Earthman had dredged out the noisomest depths of the foulest vocabularies in space for the terms he had just employed. "If you weren't drunk, I'd break every bone in your laxo-soaked carcass." The other man's anger was sternly suppressed, but he looked at the dock walloper with no friendship in his eyes. "I don't ask lousy spaceport bums to drink with me every day, and when I do, they do, or else. Do you want to take that drink now, or do you want a couple of the boys to work you over first? Barkeep, bring 2 glasses of laxo over here." Now the time was short indeed, but Kinnison could not act yet. Bominger's conference was still on. The lensman didn't know enough yet. The fellow wasn't very suspicious, certainly, or he would have made a pass at him before this. Bloodshed meant less than nothing to these gentry. The stranger did not want to incur Bominger's wrath by killing a steady customer. The fellow probably thought the whole mind ray story was hocus-pocus anyway, not a chance in a million of it being true. Besides, he needed a machine, and Kinnison couldn't hide a thing, let alone anything as big as that mind ray machine had been, because he didn't have clothes enough on to flag a handcar with. But that free drink was certainly doped. Oh, they wanted to question him. It would be a truth dope in the laxo. Then he certainly couldn't take that drink. Then came the all-important second. Just as the bartender set the glasses down, Bominger's interview ended. At the signing off, Kinnison got additional data just as he had thought that he would, and in that instant, before the drug master could restore his screen, the fat man died, his brain literally blasted. And in that same instant, Kinnison's lens fairly throbbed with the power of the call he sent out to his allies. But not even Kinnison could hurl such a mental bolt without some outward sign. His face stiffened, perhaps, or his eyes may have lost their drunken, vacant stare, to take on momentarily the keen, cold ruthlessness that was for the moment his. At any rate, the enemy agent was now definitely suspicious. "Drink that, bum, and drink it quick, or burn," he snapped, the lamater out and poised. The Tellurian's hand reached out for the glass, but his mind also reached out, and faster by a second, to the brains of 2 nearby agents. Those worthies drew their own weapons and with wild yells began firing, seemingly indiscriminately, yet in those blasts 2 of the thought-screened minions died. For a fraction of a second, even the hard-schooled mind of Kinnison's opponent was distracted, and that was long enough for the Gray Lensman's instantaneous nervous reactions and his mighty muscles. A quick flick of the wrist sent the potent liquor into the Boskonian's eyes. A lightning thrust of the knee sent the little table hurtling against his gun hand, flinging the weapon afar. Simultaneously, the lensman's ham-like fist, urged by all the strength and all the speed of his 216 pounds of rawhide and whalebone, drove forward. Not for the jaw, not for the head or the face. Lensmen know better than to mash bare hands, break fingers and knuckles against bone. For the solar plexus. The big patrolman's fist sank forearm deep. The stricken Zwilnik uttered one shrieking grunt, doubled up, and collapsed, never to rise again. Kinnison leaped for the fellow's delameter. Too late. He was already hemmed in. 1, 2, 3, 4 of the nearest men died without having received a physical blow. Again and again, Kinnison's heavy fists and far heavier feet crashed deep into vital spots. One thought-screened enemy dived at him bodily in a Tomagun Donegar, to fall with a broken neck as the lensman opposed instantly the only possible parry. A savage chop, edge-handed, just below the base of the skull, the while he disarmed the surviving thought-screened stranger with an accurately hurled chair. The latter, feinting a swing, launched a vicious French kick. The lensman, expecting anything, perceived the foot coming. His big hands shot out like striking snakes, closing and twisting savagely in the one fleeting instant then jerking upward and backward. A hard, heavy Doc Walloper's boot crashed thuddingly to a mark. A shriek rent the air, and that foeman, too, was done. Not fair fighting, no, nor clovey. Lensmen did not go and do not fight according to the tenet of the late Marquis of Queensberry. They use the weapons provided by Mother Nature only when they must, but they can and do use them with telling effect indeed, when body-to-body brawling becomes necessary. For they are skilled in the art. Every lensman has a complete detailed knowledge of all the lethal tricks of foul combat known to all the dirty fighters of 10,000 planets for twice 10,000 years. And then the doors and windows crashed in, admitting those whom no other bifurcated race has ever faced willingly in hand-to-hand combat, full-armed Valerians swinging their space axes. The gangsters broke, then, and fled in panic disorder, but escape from Narcotic's fine meshed net was impossible. They were cut down to a man. "QX, Kinnison," came two hard, sharp thoughts. The lensman did not see the Tellurian, but Lieutenant Peter Van Buskirk did. That is, he saw him, but did not look at him. "Hi, Kim, you little Tellurian wart," that worthy's thought was a yell. "Ain't we got fun? QX, fellows, thanks," to Gerrand and to Winstead, and "Ho, boss, thanks, you big Valerian ape," to the gigantic Dutch Valerian with whom he had shared so many experiences in the past. "A good clean-up, fellows?" 100%, thanks to you. We'll put you—" "Don't, please. You will probably clog my jets if you do. I don't appear in this anywhere. It's just one of your good routine jobs of mopping up. Clear ether, fellows. I've got to do a flit." "Where?" all three wanted to ask, but they didn't. The Gray Lensman was gone. End of Chapter 6.